I ran into her best friend at the store. Funny, my wife said she's on a trip with you. She said, I haven't seen her in weeks. I smiled and asked, how about dinner tonight? All right, Reddit, buckle up because this one's a slow burn that ends exactly how you'd want it to. My wife thought she could play me like a fiddle while I funded her double life. Spoiler alert, she miscalculated. I'm Jake, 34 years old, and I work as an elevator technician here in Colorado. Been doing it for about 16 years now. Started as an apprentice right out of high school and worked my way up to running my own crew. It's one of those jobs nobody thinks about until they're stuck between floors. We install them, maintain them, fix them when they break down at 2 a.m. in some office building downtown. The pay is solid, the work is steady, and I've never had to fake enthusiasm in a meeting about quarterly synergy reports or whatever office people do. I bought my first house at 27. Nothing fancy, just a 3-bedroom ranch in Aurora with a 2-car garage where I could store my tools and tinker with stuff on weekends. Paid extra every month on the mortgage because I liked watching that principal balance drop. Some guys spend their money on flashy cars or expensive hobbies. I spent mine on equity and peace of mind. Met my wife Hannah at a friend's cookout back in 2019. She was wearing this yellow sundress and had this laugh that could cut through a crowded room. Worked as an administrative assistant at some insurance company downtown. Nothing glamorous, but she seemed grounded. Seemed being the key word there. First date was at this hole-in-the-wall taco place she'd been wanting to try. We sat there for 3 hours talking about everything from childhood pets to which Fast and Furious movie was actually the best. She thought my job was interesting, asked real questions about how elevators worked and what happens when the cables snap. Spoiler, they don't. There's like 8 backup systems. She didn't check her phone once. That last part matters more than I realized at the time. Second date, I took her hiking at Red Rocks. She showed up in proper boots, not fancy sneakers, which told me she actually listened when I mentioned the terrain. We packed sandwiches and sat on a ledge watching the sun go down, while she told me about her dream of traveling Europe someday. I filed that away for later. By date 5, I knew I wanted something serious. She wasn't playing games. She returned texts within a reasonable time. She remembered details I'd mentioned weeks earlier. When her car broke down on a Tuesday night, she called me instead of her ex or some random friend with benefits. That meant something. We dated for 2 years before I proposed. Nothing crazy, just dinner at her favorite Italian place and a ring I'd saved 6 months for. Her dad had given me his blessing over a game of poker at his house the week before. Told me I was the first boyfriend he actually liked, which apparently was a big deal, because Hannah's sister had married a guy who still borrowed money from his parents at 32. She cried, said yes, and we were married by the following spring. Small ceremony. Backyard reception at her parents' place. I built a wooden archway for us to stand under during the vows. Her mom still has it in her garden. Her parents loved me. My parents loved her. Everyone thought we were the couple that had it figured out. For a while we did, or at least I thought we did. The first 3 years of marriage were solid. We split bills fairly, took turns cooking dinner, and actually talked to each other like adults. I handled the mortgage and utilities. She covered groceries and her car payment. We had a joint savings account that we both contributed to every paycheck. System worked. Then sometime around year 4, things started feeling different. Not dramatically different, just off. Like when you're driving and realize your alignment's slightly pulling left. Easy to ignore at first, but eventually you notice you're always correcting. Hannah started getting protective of her phone. Not in an obvious way. More like it was always face down on the table. Always on silent. She'd take it to the bathroom with her, which she never used to do. When it buzzed during dinner, her eyes would flick to it like a reflex. Then she'd force herself to look away. I noticed. I just didn't say anything yet. Then the conversations got shorter. I'd come home after a 10-hour day of troubleshooting motor drives and replacing worn cables and elevator shafts, boots scuffed, shirt damp from working in machine rooms with no ventilation, and she'd barely look up from whatever she was scrolling through. One night in particular stands out. I walked in, dropped my keys in the bowl by the door like always, and found her on the couch with her phone pressed into a throw pillow like she was hiding it from a security camera. Her thumb was planted on the lock button, not resting, guarding. Hey, I said. She flicked her eyes at me for half a second and waved her hand like I'd interrupted something important. No smile. No, how was work? Just a dismissal. I stood there a beat, letting the silence do its thing. Something smells like nothing. We eating or am I raiding the fridge? She said, still not looking up. Check the fridge. I repeated it back to her. Check the fridge, like I was confirming a delivery order. Cool. We're roommates now. Her jaw tightened. Don't do that. Do what? Make it a thing. I took off my boots. Slow and deliberate. Walked to the kitchen, found a container of leftover lasagna with a sticky note on top. Made dinner. Not love you. Not hope you're hungry. Just instructions. I leaned against the counter and called out, "What about Saturday? We said we'd check out that open house near Parker. Remember?" She snapped back. "I'm tired." "Tired of what? Me?" Her head finally turned, eyes flat. I said, "I'm tired. Can you not interrogate me the second you walk in?" Interrogate. That word landed with a little click in my head. Filed it away. I heated the lasagna anyway. Set the table like I always did. 2 plates, 2 forks, water glasses. I wasn't trying to win points. I was trying to keep our house from feeling like an airport terminal. I called her to dinner. 5 minutes, I said. She didn't move. Phone still half buried in the pillow. Thumb still on the lock button. I watched that thumb. It told me more than her mouth ever did. She finally got up like she was doing me a favor and sat down. Phone came with her. Not in her pocket, not on the counter. Right next to her plate, face down, her palm hovering over it like a protective shield. I pulled my chair back. Phone stays off the table. House rule. Her eyes narrowed. "Excuse me? Phone off the table. Why? Because you said so? Because we're eating together. That's supposed to mean something." She let out a short laugh. Not amused. More like a warning shot. "You're not my dad." I raised an eyebrow. "Good. Because if I were, you wouldn't talk to me like that." "There it is," she said. Voice louder now. "Control. You always do this. You can't stand not knowing everything." I didn't argue. I reached over, picked up her phone with 2 fingers like it was a dirty dish, and set it on the sideboard behind her. Not a toss, not a slam, just a move. She grabbed her fork like she was going to stab the plate. "Are you serious right now?" "Dead serious. You're being controlling." I took a slow breath, looked at my own plate, then back at her. "If you think basic respect is control, you've been living easy." Her chair scraped back. "Unbelievable." I stood, lifted my plate, and took it with me toward the front door. "What are you doing?" she called. I opened the door, stepped onto the porch, and sat on the top step with my food. Cool night air. Quiet, honest eating. I called back, eating without a third person at the table. She walked to the doorway, arms crossed like she was about to deliver a verdict. "So you're going to sulk out there like a child?" I took a bite, chewed, swallowed. "I'm not sulking. I'm adjusting." Adjusting to what? To the new version of this house where I don't compete with a screen for basic courtesy. Her lips pressed into a tight line. "You're making this weird." "No," I said. Calm as a man reading a weather report. "You made it weird. I'm just naming it." She stared at me like she wanted a fight. I didn't give her one. After a second, she turned and went back inside. The door closed. Not slammed, just closed. Like a decision being made. That night she came home late, past 10. I heard the car, then the quiet footsteps. I didn't get up to greet her. Didn't play home monitor either. I stayed in bed, light off, listening. She slipped under the covers without a word. I waited a full minute. "You okay?" Silence. Hannah. A sigh. The kind people use when they want you to feel like a burden. "I need time. To be alone. Please don't start." "Start what?" "This." Questions. Talking. Just don't. I turned my head on the pillow, staring into the dark. "We're married. We're not supposed to be strangers who share a mortgage." "I said I need time," she repeated. Sharper now. That was the first moment I knew the line had been crossed. Not because she needed space. People get tired. People get overwhelmed. But because she wanted space with the comfort of my paycheck still running in the background. She wanted me present as a resource and absent as a person. I didn't argue. Made a mental note. Went quiet. The next morning I left early for work. As I backed out of the driveway, I saw her through the kitchen window. Phone in hand, coffee untouched. Face glowing from that screen like it was the only light she needed. At the job site, my buddy Danny caught one look at me and smirked. Danny's been in the elevator trade forever. Guy can smell trouble like a frayed cable. We'd worked together for almost 8 years at this point. He'd been through 2 divorces himself and had this sixth sense for when something was rotting in a man's home life. "You've got that sleeping next to a wall face," he said, setting down a hydraulic pump assembly. "I'm good," I told him. Danny snorted. That's what men say right before they stop being good. He set the unit down and wiped his hands on his jeans. "Let me guess. She's on her phone all the time. Gets defensive when you ask simple questions. Looks at you like you're interrupting her real life." I didn't answer, which was answer enough. Danny nodded like a doctor confirming a diagnosis. "Yeah, I've seen that movie twice. Didn't like the ending either time. I'm handling it." "Yeah." He tapped his wrench against his palm. "Handle with tools, not feelings. Don't get emotional, don't beg, don't bargain. Just document, prepare, and execute. Women like that, they count on you being too attached to think straight. Don't give her that advantage." That line stuck with me all day. Not because Danny was some philosopher, because he was right in the way that matters. He'd learned through pain what I was just starting to figure out through observation. That night, I tried again. One clean attempt. I cooked. Grilled chicken, rice, salad. Nothing fancy, just effort. Hannah walked in, saw the plates, and her eyes flicked to the side like she was checking for cameras. Phone went face down on the counter, hands still hovering. Dinner, I said. Sit. She hesitated. I already ate. You didn't. The fridge is full of my leftovers from yesterday. Her mouth opened like she wanted to argue. Then she closed it and sat down, like she was calculating which version of herself would win. I sat across from her. Tell me what's going on. Nothing, she said. Too fast. Okay. Then tell me why nothing has you hiding your phone like it's classified. Her eyes flashed. I'm not hiding it. You buried it in a pillow last night. That's dramatic. It's accurate. She leaned back and crossed her arms. You're exhausted, and you're taking it out on me. I nodded once. Try again. Her jaw tightened. I don't owe you a play-by-play of my thoughts. I'm not asking for a play-by-play. I'm asking for basic partnership. You've been acting like I'm an inconvenience. You're making it about you. It is about me. It's my marriage, too. She picked up her phone like she couldn't stop herself. The screen lit for half a second, and she angled it away from me on instinct. Then she caught herself and locked it. Thumb on the button again. There it was. The reflex. I set my fork down. New rule. No phone at the table. And another rule. If you tell me don't start again, I'm going to start changing how this house works. Her eyes narrowed. You threatening me? I'm informing you. Threats are emotional. This is logistics. She laughed again. That same dry exhale. Oh my God. You think you're some tough guy now because you ate on the porch? I tilted my head. I think I'm a man who's done begging for normal conversation. She stood up, plate barely touched. I'm going to bed. Fine, I said. But hear me. You don't get to shut me out and still keep the benefits like nothing changed. She froze at the doorway. Benefits? Mortgage. Car. Bills. My attention. My time. Those are benefits. And they're not automatic if you're treating me like a roommate. She turned and went upstairs. That weekend, I made my first real move. Not a speech. A move. I bought 2 plane tickets to Rome. A week. Non-refundable. A reset button with an expiration date. I did it because part of me still wanted the version of us that didn't feel like a business arrangement. I came home Monday, put the printed itinerary on the kitchen counter, and waited until she walked in. Hannah glanced at it like it was a parking ticket. What's that? Rome. A week. Just us. She stared, blinking once. Rome? Yeah. You want space? Fine. Let's take it somewhere that isn't this house. No phones, no half conversations. We go. We reset. Her face didn't soften. It tightened, like I'd cornered her with kindness. I don't want to go with you, she said. Flat. I held her gaze. Say that again. She exhaled sharply. I don't want to go with you. The room felt suddenly very quiet. Then she added, like she was ordering a substitute at a sandwich shop, can I take Brooke? I didn't move for a second. Not because I was shocked, because I was measuring her. Measuring how far she'd go. Brooke? I repeated. Yeah, she said quickly. She's been wanting to travel. And honestly, I need a break. A break from what? From your husband? Her eyes rolled. From everything. From pressure. Interesting, I replied. Because when people need a break, they don't usually ask their spouse to pay for a replacement. She threw her hands up. You're twisting it. No, I said. And I reached for the papers, slid the second ticket out from the packet, and folded it once. Clean. I'm not financing a trip with a substitute. Not happening. Her face changed. It's non-refundable, Jake. Then it'll sit. Like a reminder. She scoffed. You're being petty. I'm being awake. She stepped closer, voice sharp. So what? Now you're punishing me? I nodded toward the hallway. Guest room. Starting tonight. Her mouth opened. You can't be serious. I can, I said. And I am. She stared at me like I'd slapped her. But I didn't raise my voice. I didn't crowd her. I just kept going. Separate accounts. I'm opening a new one tomorrow. Bills will be split. The car schedule goes on the fridge. And my work hours are changing. I'll be leaving earlier. She shook her head, disgusted. You're insane. I shrugged. Maybe. Or maybe I'm done funding a life where I'm treated like background noise. Her phone buzzed. Her eyes dropped to it instantly. I watched that reflex, then looked back at her. You can take your space, but you don't take my resources while you do. She glared. Fine. I'll go alone. Do what you want. Just understand the new access rule. We can be polite. We're not doing married while you act single. She took the stairs 2 at a time. Door to the guest room closed hard. That night she tried the first soft play. I came home the next evening and found a mug of tea waiting on the counter. Honey, the kind she knows I like when I'm getting over a cold. She was sitting at the table, hands folded, voice gentle, like she borrowed it from someone else. Hey, can we talk? I set my lunch cooler down and looked at the tea. What's this? A peace offering. She gave me a small smile. I've been burned out, confused. I'm not trying to hurt you. I pulled out a chair and sat, but I didn't touch the mug. You're tired and confused, but you were clear enough to ask if you could take Brooke to Rome on my dime. Her cheeks flushed. That came out wrong. It came out honest. She leaned forward, eyes glossy. I don't want us to blow up over this. I nodded once. Then stop lighting matches. I'm not, she insisted. I just need room to breathe. Room? Yes. A blank check? No. She reached across the table like she wanted to touch my hand. I slid my hand back and rested it on my thigh. She blinked at that. Recalculate. So what now? Now we keep it civil. My rules stay. Guest room. Separate money. Phone stays off the table when we do talk. And after your trip, we'll have a real conversation. Her brows lifted. After my trip? Yep. You wanted space. Take it. We'll talk when you're done playing invisible. She swallowed. Jake, come on. I leaned back. Polite, not close. That's the setting you picked. Her face hardened for a second, then softened again like she was cycling through options. Okay, she said quietly. Okay, I'll respect it. That sounded nice. It also sounded rehearsed. 2 days later, she left for the airport with one suitcase and the energy of a woman walking into a role she'd practiced. No kiss, no real goodbye. Just a quick, awkward hug, like we were co-workers at a retirement party. Text me if you need anything, she said. Already drifting toward the door. I nodded. Safe flight. She walked to the car and I watched her go. Without that tight feeling men get when they're afraid to lose someone. I wasn't afraid anymore. I was taking inventory. The second her taillights disappeared, I moved. Not out of rage, out of clarity. I changed the garage code, reset the Wi-Fi password, updated my email passwords and the bank login, put a sticky note on the fridge. If you need access to anything, message me. Then I sat down at the kitchen table with a legal pad and started documenting every weird charge on the credit card from the past 6 months. Every time she said she was somewhere, but the math didn't add up. Every night she came home late with an excuse that felt rehearsed. I pulled up our shared calendar and compared it against her stories. Yoga class on Tuesdays? The studio closed at 7, but she didn't get home until 9:30. Dinner with coworkers? On a Thursday? Her office had been working remote that whole week. The lies weren't sophisticated. They just relied on me not paying attention. I opened a folder on the table and started building a timeline. Ticket purchase. Her refusal. Her request to take Brooke instead. The date she left. Bank transfers that didn't match any bills we had. The weird charges I'd been ignoring because marriage means giving people the benefit of the doubt. Except trust isn't a blank check. It's a credit line. And she'd maxed hers out. I called my buddy Danny and asked if he knew a good notary who worked late. Danny didn't ask questions. He just said, yeah, handle with tools. I'll text you the address. The next 2 days I worked like a machine. Early mornings at job sites, evenings organizing paperwork. I got copies of everything. The mortgage, both car titles, our marriage certificate, bank statements going back 2 years. I wanted facts. I wanted documentation. I wanted a foundation that couldn't be argued with when the time came. On the 3rd day, I went to a discount grocery store near our place because we were out of basics and I wasn't going to starve while my wife was in finding herself mode. I was in the produce aisle comparing avocados like a normal human when I heard my name. Jake? I turned and saw Brooke. Brooke was Hannah's friend, but not the kind that played games. She was direct, athletic build, no-nonsense face, eyes that didn't dance around topics. She was holding a basket with tomatoes, bread, and coffee, like she lived in reality. Hey, I said. Neutral. I didn't expect to see you. She smiled. Then her smile faltered. Wait, aren't you supposed to be in Rome? I looked at her for a second. The store noise faded behind the question. I could ask you the same thing. Her eyebrows shot up. What? I held my basket steady. Hannah said she wanted to take you, instead of me. Brooke's face drained. She said what? She asked me if you could go instead of me. Then she went alone. Brooke stared, mouth slightly open. She told me she was doing a solo reset. She didn't say anything about tickets or you or me. I nodded once. That checks out. Brooke's grip tightened on her basket handle. No, it doesn't. That's not okay. I kept my voice low. What did she tell you exactly? Brooke looked around like she suddenly remembered we were in public. Then she stepped closer, lowered her voice. She asked me some weird questions the past few weeks. Like, if someone asked where we were, what would you say? I thought she was talking about work drama, friends gossiping. I told her to stop being dramatic. I raised an eyebrow. Did she ever mention Rome? No, Brooke said, sharper now. Jake, what is going on? I exhaled through my nose and pointed at the end cap near the tomatoes. You want to stand here and talk or keep shopping like nothing's happening? Brooke set her basket down on the floor like she decided shopping was over. Talk. I nodded. Show me your messages with her. Brooke hesitated for half a second, then pulled out her phone and started scrolling. Her face got tighter with every swipe. Oh my God. She stopped, then turned the screen toward me. Look, there it was. Hannah. If he asks, say we're at a museum, like the one with the big stairs. Brooke. Why would he ask me that? Hannah. Just in case. Don't make it weird. Another message. Hannah. If you need, I can send you a selfie to post so it looks normal. Brooke. Hannah, stop. Hannah. Please, I just need you to be cool. Brooke's voice was thin. Jake, I didn't answer most of this. I thought she was spiraling. My eyes tracked down the thread. There was a screenshot of a boarding pass. Tight crop. No passenger name. Just a flight and a date. Brooke scrolled further, jaw clenched. And this? She opened an image. Hotel confirmation. 2 names listed. Neither was Jake. Neither was Brooke. I felt my face go still. Not angry. Just final. Brooke swallowed. That's not me? No, it's not. She swiped to another photo. A shot of hotel carpet. 2 suitcases. 2 pairs of shoes. 1 pair was men's sneakers. Not mine. I don't wear sneakers. Work boots or running shoes. Those were neither. Brooke's eyes flicked up to mine. Jake. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't make a scene. I just nodded. Send me everything. Brooke's fingers flew. Done. And listen. This isn't. I didn't know. I believe you. But I need to understand how long she's been building this. Brooke's nostrils flared. I'm not letting her use my name like that. And I'm not watching you stand there and explain it away for her. I shifted my basket to one hand. I'm not explaining anything away. Good, Brooke said, because this is messed up. I glanced at the checkout lines and back at her. Coffee. Tomorrow morning. I want the full picture. Brooke nodded without hesitation. 9. The diner off the highway. The next morning I walked into that diner and the waitress, mid-50s, sharp eyeliner, voice like she ran the place, looked at Brooke and me and smirked. Well, she said, setting down menus, you two look like you're either fixing something or breaking up. Brooke didn't flinch. I didn't either. I answered. Both. The waitress chuckled. At least you're honest. What can I get you? Coffee? Black. Same, Brooke said. When the waitress walked away, Brooke leaned forward. Okay, here's what I know. I kept my hands folded on the table. Start from the beginning. Brooke took a breath. A month ago, she started asking these casual questions. Like, do you ever feel trapped? Or, if you needed a week away, how would you explain it so nobody panics? I thought she was being dramatic, like always. I watched her face. Brooke wasn't enjoying this. She was angry. She stopped mentioning you, Brooke continued. At first, it was little things. Jake's busy. Then it was like you didn't exist. If I asked how you were, she'd say, he's fine, and change the topic. I nodded slowly. So she was practicing a world where I didn't matter. Brooke grimaced. Yeah. I asked, did she ever say my name in a negative way? Brooke's lips pressed together. She'd say you were solid, like you were furniture, like you were dependable, and not exciting. I gave a short, humorless breath. Furniture. Nice. I'm not saying it to hurt you. I'm saying it because it matters. She talked like you were a feature of her life, not a person. I nodded. That tracks. Brooke tapped her phone against the table, frustrated. Then the alibi stuff started. She'd test me. If someone asked where I was, what would you say? I told her I'm not your spokesperson. She laughed it off, but she kept going anyway. I said, she kept going. Brooke nodded. She kept going. The waitress came back with coffee and poured like she was fueling a fire. Then she wandered off, leaving us with the smell of pancakes and uncomfortable truth. Brooke looked me straight in the eye. Jake, I'm not going to sit here and watch you justify someone who used my name like a mask. I'm not justifying. Good. Brooke paused, then said something that surprised me. How about dinner? With me. I held her gaze. Calm. You sure you're not just trying to rewrite a bad day? Brooke didn't smile. She didn't play cute. This isn't a move. It's dinner. 2 people who don't lie want to talk about the weather. Fine. I just won't sit there and pretend this is normal. I leaned back slightly, thinking. Not about romance. About reality. Thursday, I said. 1 condition. Brooke raised an eyebrow. Only 1? Phone doesn't get a seat at the table, and honesty stays in the room. I'm not doing triangles. Brooke nodded once. Firm. Deal. I left the diner and went straight into action mode. I printed the screenshots, pulled bank statements, highlighted dates, made copies of the mortgage paperwork and the car title, took my name off auto payments that weren't mine, opened a separate account, moved my direct deposit. Then I packed my important stuff, passport, work certifications, spare keys, put it all in a locked storage bin in my truck. I labeled boxes in the garage. Hannah. Kitchen. Hannah. Bath. Hannah. Closet. Not dramatic. Efficient. I sent her a message. Account separated as discussed. Car schedule on fridge. Contact me if you need access to anything. No emojis, no speeches, just terms. 2 days later, my phone buzzed. Hannah. Hey, landed. Miss you. I stared at the screen. Set the phone down. Didn't answer. When she got back, she walked in like she'd practiced being warm in the mirror. Hey, babe, she said, pulling her suitcase behind her. I brought you something. She held up a small paper bag. Some kind of souvenir. Probably bought at the airport gift shop on the way home. I stood near the kitchen doorway. Calm, ready, arms at my sides, face neutral. Kitchen, I said. Her smile faltered. What? Kitchen, I repeated. And I closed the front door after she stepped inside. Not aggressive, just final. She rolled her suitcase into the kitchen, still trying the sweet tone. Jake, come on. Can we just talk like normal people? I missed you. The trip was good, but I kept thinking about us. About how we need to reconnect. I watched her face. Studied it. The way her eyes kept darting to gauging my reaction. The way her voice had that slightly too bright quality people use when they're selling something they don't believe in. I placed a folder on the table. Thick. Neat. Organized. Color-coded tabs. Dates highlighted. Everything in chronological order. What's that? She asked. Voice tightening. Facts. Facts, she repeated slowly, scanning the folder like it might bite her. Jake, what is this? What have you been doing while I was gone? Research, I said. I opened it and slid out the printed hotel confirmation. 2 names. Neither is mine. Neither is Brooks. The other name was a guy named Kevin. I'd never heard of him, but the internet had. Found his social media in about 10 minutes. Software sales. Lived in Boulder. Posted a lot of pictures of hiking and craft coffee shops. Real adventurous type. Her face changed fast. It's not what you think. I didn't react. Just slid out the shoe photo. 2 suitcases, 2 pairs of shoes. One is a man's. Not mine. I can explain, she said quickly. I was confused. I was under pressure. Things have been so hard lately, and I just needed to feel something different. I held up a hand. Facts beat speeches. Jake, Confusion doesn't book hotels, I cut in. Pressure doesn't hide behind your friend's name. Her eyes flashed. Then she tried another angle. Softer. I was going through something. I didn't want to hurt you. I looked at her. Steady. You didn't want to lose resources. That's different. Her mouth opened, then closed. She looked down at the folder like it might offer her a better script. I slid over the separation forms. Sign this. Notary at 6 tonight. Her head snapped up. 6? Today? Yes. Today. She shook her head. Panic creeping in. You're moving too fast. I leaned back. No. I'm moving on time. You've been planning. I'm responding. She reached for my hand again, like she could touch the decision out of me. Please, just give me a chance. I'll be present. I'll fix it. I'll put the phone away, I swear. Then she stood and came around the table, overly affectionate, hands on my shoulders, trying to pull me into her, like we were back in the old days. I missed you, she whispered. I want us. I want you. I stood up, gently removed her hands, stepped back. She blinked, startled. What is wrong with you? I answered. Calm. People change when the price changes. Here's the new price. We're done. Her face twisted. So that's it? You're throwing us away? I'm not throwing anything. I'm refusing to stand in a marriage where I'm treated like furniture. She tried anger. You don't even know what happened. I gestured to the folder. I know enough. She tried tears. I didn't mean to. I cut her off again. Not cruel. Just finished. You meant to keep the lifestyle while you took your freedom. You just didn't think I'd notice. She stared at me like she wanted to argue, but the folder kept talking without words. Here are the terms, I said. Guest room until you move your stuff. Bill schedule stays. Money stays separate. Communication stays clean. She swallowed hard. You can't do this. I already did. That afternoon, she tried a different tactic. Attack me on my territory. I was on a job site in Highlands Ranch, modernizing an old freight elevator in a warehouse that was being converted to loft apartments. My foreman, Mike, called my name from the pit. Jake. His eyes narrowed. You got company. I turned and saw Hannah standing there in nice clothes. Hair done, phone in hand like a weapon she didn't know how to use properly. My crew went quiet. Danny whistled softly under his breath like he was watching a storm roll in. Hannah marched up. We need to talk. Now. I looked at her, then at Mike, then back to Hannah. This is work, not for family scenes. Her voice rose. So you're just going to ignore me? I kept my tone level. If you want to communicate, email. She scoffed. Email? Are you serious? Serious, I replied. You don't get to show up here and perform. Danny leaned against a stack of rail brackets and muttered, She picked the wrong stage. Hannah shot him a glare. Stay out of it. Danny smiled. Gladly. Mike stepped forward. professional and bored. Ma'am, you can't be on site? Insurance liability? Hannah looked back at me, desperate now. Jake, please. I didn't soften. Not in public. Not on my job. Not here. Not like this. Her eyes went hard. You're humiliating me. I raised an eyebrow. No, you're doing that all by yourself. She stood there another second, realized nobody was coming to rescue her narrative, walked back to her car. Danny watched her leave and nodded once. Tools, not feelings. Exactly, I replied. The notary appointment happened that evening. No courtroom. No theatrics. A small office. Fluorescent lights. Quiet signatures. Hannah tried to stall. Tried to negotiate with eye contact. Tried to squeeze my hand under the table. I didn't play. After that, I moved. Not moved out like a dramatic exit. I moved like a man who doesn't sleep next to a problem anymore. I took a rental place 30 minutes away for a start, then lined up something more permanent. Left a key on the counter at the old house with a note. Pickup window for your things is Saturday 10 to 12. Garage access only. Saturday morning, she showed up with her sister in a rented van. I didn't invite the sister in. I didn't need a mediator. I needed a schedule. At 11:58, Hannah was still in the garage, dragging boxes like she wanted me to come out and beg. I stood inside the doorway. 2 minutes. She glared. You're timing me? Yes, because you like gray areas. I don't. At 12 o'clock, I pressed the garage door button. It started rolling down. Her eyes widened. Jake. Seriously? Window closed. The door finished shutting. Clean. Quiet. Final. That Thursday, I met Brooke for dinner. Not as an escape. As proof that respect still existed in the world. We sat at a small table in a simple place. No fancy lighting, no performance. Brooke set her phone face down and pushed it away without me asking. Thank you, I said. Brooke smirked. It's not hard to act like a grown-up. We talked about work, about the way Denver traffic makes people lose their minds, about how her job had been chaos lately, normal stuff, real stuff. Halfway through, she looked at me and said, You okay? I nodded. I'm clear. That's different, she said. It is, I agreed. A week later, Hannah tried one last move. She found out where Brooke lived, probably through mutual friends, and showed up there thinking she could regain control by confronting the new variable. Brooke told me the story after. Calm, but firm. She knocked like she owned the door, Brooke said. I opened it a crack. What did she say? I asked. Brooke mimicked Hannah's tone, perfectly sweet with teeth. She said, We need to talk about Jake, like she was scheduling maintenance. And you? I asked. Brooke's eyes sharpened. I said email him. Hannah tried to push. Brooke didn't move. She said, You think you won? And you said? Brooke shrugged. I said, This isn't a contest, it's a boundary. Then I closed the door. When Hannah finally cornered me after that, outside a grocery store parking lot of all places, because she loved public places when she needed an audience, she came in hot. So that's it, she snapped. You're really doing this. You're just replacing me. I looked at her, steady, hands in my jacket pockets, voice quiet enough that she had to listen. I'm not replacing anything. I'm removing what doesn't work. Her eyes narrowed. You're acting like you're perfect. I almost laughed but didn't. I'm not perfect. I'm just not available for disrespect anymore. She swallowed, then tried to soften one last time. Jake, we had a life. I nodded. We had a setup. Her face twisted. You're so cold? No, I'm stable. She stepped closer, lowering her voice. You're really going to throw away years? I met her eyes and gave her the last line she earned. I don't build where the foundation's being damaged on purpose. She stared at me like she wanted to argue, but there was nowhere to go. The story she'd written needed me to play the clueless husband. I wasn't in it anymore. I got in my truck and drove away. 4 months later, the divorce was finalized. Colorado requires a 91-day waiting period, and Hannah tried to drag it out even longer, with requests for mediation and reconciliation periods. The judge wasn't interested. Neither was I. We sat in that courtroom for maybe 20 minutes. She cried. I didn't. Signed the papers and walked out into the parking lot like a man leaving a job he should have quit years ago. She got half the equity in the house. I got the truck, my tools, and the retirement account I'd been building since I was 22. She wanted the furniture. I let her have it. Easier to start fresh anyway. The house sold in 9 days. Cash buyer who wanted to flip it. I walked through one last time before closing to make sure I hadn't left anything behind. Found a phone charger behind the nightstand. Hers. I left it on the counter and locked the door behind me. I moved to Lakewood, rented a 2-bedroom apartment with a garage bay included. Set up my workbench the first weekend. Bought new furniture that I picked out myself. Nobody else's taste to consider. Took a position with a company that specialized in high-rise elevator installations across the Front Range. Better pay. Better hours. Boss named Carl, who'd been in the trade for 30 years and didn't believe in micromanagement. First day, he shook my hand and said, "Do your job, don't cause drama, and we'll get along fine." That was the whole speech. Hannah's situation fell apart pretty quick after the divorce. Kevin from Boulder dumped her about 2 months in. Apparently, spontaneous gets old when rent's due, and your girlfriend just lost half her household income. She moved back in with her parents for a while. Her dad texted me about it, said he was sorry, said she'd made the biggest mistake of her life. I told him I appreciated him reaching out, but there was nothing left to discuss. She tried contacting me 3 more times after that. First was an email, long and rambling, talking about personal growth and second chances. Deleted it without responding. Second was a voicemail on my birthday, crying, apologizing. Said she finally understood what she'd thrown away. I listened to it once, then blocked the number. Third time she showed up at my apartment complex, sat in her car in the parking lot for an hour before security asked her to leave. Brooke saw the whole thing from the window. That's actually how I found out Brooke had been staying over more often than not by then. We'd been taking things slow, but somewhere along the way her toothbrush ended up in my bathroom, and her coffee mug ended up in my cabinet, and it just felt right. Guys, we are so close to hit 100,000 subscribers on this channel. If you are not subscribed to the channel, please consider subscribing. It really helps hit that 100,000 mark. Thanks for making this dream come true. My boss put his inexperienced son in charge of a hospital build and tried to make me rubber stamp the shortcuts. So I walked away, and the safety tests lit up their paperwork. All right, Reddit. So my boss tried to get me to sign off on safety systems that weren't tested because his son needed to look good on a hospital project. I said no, quit, and watched the whole thing blow up in their faces. I need to give you some context first. I'm Gabriel, 51M. I've done fire protection/life safety commissioning for 19 years. I'm the guy who makes sure the sprinklers, alarms, and smoke control actually work when it matters. Hospitals, data centers, high-rises, buildings where screwing up means people die. I take it seriously because I've seen what happens when people don't. Early in my career, I watched 3 guys go down from smoke inhalation during a test because somebody had propped open a fire door and disconnected the maglock. One of them was 22, first week on the job, spent 3 weeks in the hospital with lung damage he'll carry forever. I visited him twice. The second time, his mother asked me why her son couldn't breathe right anymore. Didn't have an answer for her. I'm also not easy to work with. I've got a short fuse when people try to cut corners on life safety for schedule reasons. A few years back, I got into it with a PM who wanted to skip fire pump testing and submit falsified data. Called him something HR made me apologize for in writing. That incident's been sitting in my personnel file ever since, ready to be pulled out whenever someone needs to paint me as the problem. Anyway, here's what happened. The Meridian Medical Tower was supposed to be Denver's flagship healthcare expansion. 14 stories of acute care, surgical suites, ICU floors, and a level 2 trauma center that would serve the entire northern metro area. $240 million of systems that had to work perfectly because the people inside would be vulnerable in ways office workers aren't. Patients on ventilators, surgery patients under anesthesia, newborns in the NICU. People who couldn't evacuate themselves if something went wrong. I was standing in the fire pump room on a Tuesday morning, March 11th, watching my best test tech, Rudy Espinoza, run preliminary checks on the electric fire pump controller when Stan Harlan walked in with his son trailing behind him like a shadow in an expensive hard hat. Stan was the senior project executive for Ridgeline on this job. 58 years old, silver hair, the kind of guy who learned construction management from spreadsheets rather than job sites. He'd been promising the hospital owner an August 15th substantial completion for 6 months, even though everyone with actual field experience knew we were tracking toward late September at best. The man was schedule-obsessed in a way that made my teeth hurt. His son Scooter, yeah, that's his name, was 27 with an MBA and about 14 months of actual construction experience. He'd been on the project 3 months, developing a reputation for value engineering ideas that sounded brilliant in meetings and fell apart completely in the field, and for taking credit for solutions other people developed while he was busy making phone calls. Stan stopped next to the fire pump controller. "Gabriel," he said, "we're making organizational changes. Scooter's moving into commissioning oversight. He'll coordinate all life safety testing going forward." I just glared at him. Scooter doesn't have commissioning experience. The fire marshal isn't going to accept documentation signed off by someone who doesn't understand what they're witnessing. Scooter stepped forward with that confident smile. "I've been studying the protocols, and honestly, I think we can streamline these procedures. There's a lot of redundancy in the testing schedule." Redundancy. That's what he called the verification steps that kept hospitals from burning down with patients inside. Stan cut in before I could respond. The owner wants progress. We're behind on testing, and Scooter's going to help us catch up. You'll still be involved, but Scooter will be primary contact with the AHJ. I looked at the fire pump behind them. 500 GPM at 125 psi, feeding 14 floors of hospital space. If this pump failed during a fire, people would die waiting for the fire department to establish water supply. I'm not signing off on anything that isn't properly tested, I said, and I'm not letting someone without experience represent our life safety readiness to the fire marshal. Stan's expression hardened. Nobody's asking you to compromise, but you need to be a team player here. Don't make this harder than it has to be. I knew what team player meant in Stan's vocabulary, shutting up and going along with whatever made the schedule look better. That night, I got a call from my daughter Haley. She was 24, had just finished her nursing program, and had accepted a surgical ICU position at the new tower. The hospital had given her a signing bonus and relocation package with a clawback clause tied to the opening date. If the tower didn't open on schedule, she'd lose the position or have to pay back money she'd already spent on her apartment deposit and moving expenses. Dad, there are rumors about delays. What's going on? She asked. It's complicated. Testing issues we need to work through. Testing issues that you're causing? I didn't answer. The silence stretched between us through the phone. Look, she said, I know you take safety stuff seriously, but do your job and don't ruin mine. I need this position. I've already signed the lease. She hung up before I could explain that I wasn't causing the problems. I was trying to prevent them. The next 2 weeks felt like watching a slow-motion car crash while being handcuffed to a chair. Scooter started changing the commissioning schedule without consulting me, compressing testing windows that had been carefully planned to allow for troubleshooting if systems didn't perform correctly the first time. Witness points that required AHJ attendance got eliminated or rescheduled to times when nobody could actually be present. Documentation requirements got streamlined in ways that would make any fire marshal ask uncomfortable questions. My access to project documentation got restricted. Emails that should have copied me started going only to Scooter. Meeting invitations disappeared from my calendar. Submittals I was supposed to review went through Scooter's office instead. I'd walk into rooms and conversations would stop. People I'd worked with for years suddenly couldn't make eye contact. My brother Pete was the union foreman for Consolidated Fire Protection, the sprinkler sub, 22 years running crews across dozens of major projects, genuinely good at his work, careful, detail-oriented, the kind of foreman who caught problems during installation, rather than waiting for them to show up during testing. But his guys were getting squeezed by the same schedule pressure affecting everyone else on the project. Scooter decided Pete's crews were too slow on their rough-in installation. He convinced Stan to bring in a non-union acceleration crew from a company nobody had ever heard of for the patient floors. Pete's guys got pushed to mechanical spaces and service areas, while the new crew took over the high-visibility work that would show up in progress photos. Pete called me Thursday night. His voice was exhausted. Gabriel, these new guys don't know what they're doing. I found 3 branch lines today with wrong orifice heads installed. Wrong K-factor for the hazard classification. Light hazard heads in ordinary hazard areas. If those zones get tested, they'll fail. And the fire marshal is going to want to know who approved the installation. Did you document it? Submitted it to Scooter 3 days ago with photographs and specification references. Nothing's changed. Same wrong heads, same code violations, same problems waiting to blow up during testing. The next morning, I walked the patient floors myself and documented it properly. Wrong heads in ordinary hazard areas. Stuff that would fail the second an inspector looked. I photographed each room number and the head model, built a quick spreadsheet with locations and code notes, and emailed Scooter the full packet with the subject line, Patient Floor Sprinkler Head Deficiencies, Immediate Correction Required. He replied, Forward to the sprinkler sub. I printed that email and filed it. At that point, I wasn't collecting notes. I was collecting receipts. I felt the familiar heat building in my chest. Go around him. Give the documentation to me directly. I'll get it into the project record. Friday morning, I walked onto the 7th floor to find Scooter standing over Rudy at the fire alarm annunciator panel. Rudy had the panel open, multimeter in hand, running point-to-point verification on the initiating device circuits. Standard procedure that I'd watched him perform on 20 different projects. You test every device, verify every circuit, document every reading. That's the code. Scooter was pointing at his tablet, showing Rudy some kind of spreadsheet. We need to accelerate this significantly. Test every third device and extrapolate the rest. Statistical sampling will get us through verification in half the time. Rudy glanced up and saw me. His face said everything. The look of a guy being told to do something he knows is wrong by someone who doesn't understand why it's wrong, but has the authority to make his life miserable. He wants me to initial stuff I didn't test, Rudy said quietly as I approached. I walked over, my boots heavy on the concrete floor. What's happening here? Scooter didn't look up from his tablet. Streamlining the verification process. We can statistical sample instead of full device testing. It's a standard efficiency practice. Statistical sample doesn't exist in NFPA 72 for device verification. Every device gets tested. Every circuit gets verified. Not without a written alternative method approved by the AHJ. And we don't have that. Scooter finally looked at me with that condescending patience. The code allows for alternative methods with AHJ approval. Have you gotten AHJ approval for statistical sampling? Silence. I step between Scooter and the panel. Rudy, continue full verification. Every device, every circuit, per the approved commissioning plan that we submitted to the fire marshal's office. Scooter's jaw tightened. His face went red. I'm the commissioning coordinator now. I make these calls. You can coordinate whatever you want, but Rudy works for me, and he's not signing off on partial testing that violates code. Neither am I. If you want to explain to the fire marshal why you thought statistical sampling was acceptable, be my guest. The GC superintendent, Hank Webb, had walked up behind us during the exchange. He stood there with his arms crossed, weathered face expressionless, watching the confrontation unfold. The man had 30 years in the field. He'd seen every kind of corporate disaster, every kind of shortcut that seemed smart until it wasn't. Scooter looked at Hank like he expected backup. Hank just shook his head. That's not a schedule call. That's code. Can't help you there. Scooter's face went from red to almost purple. He jabbed a finger at me, close enough that I could feel the air move. This is exactly the obstruction my father warned me about. This attitude right here. This is why this project is behind schedule. Call it what you want. The testing protocol doesn't change. Scooter stormed off toward the stairwell, tablet clutched in his hand like a weapon he didn't know how to use. Hank watched him go, then turned to look at me. That's going to come back on you, he said quietly. You know that, right? I know. After that confrontation, Stan called me into his office. His assistant said immediately, which in corporate speak means drop everything and get your butt in here. He closed the door behind me, and when he turned around, the professional mask was completely gone. What I saw underneath was something colder. Let me be clear about something, Gabriel. His voice was quiet, controlled, dangerous. I don't need you to be right. I need you to sign. Your integrity doesn't pay liquidated damages. Either get on board or get out of my way. If this job slides, you'll be the reason on paper. That was the moment I knew there was no middle ground, no compromise, no way to protect myself from inside this organization, while also protecting the people who would eventually occupy this building. The following week, Pete called me again. This time, his voice was different, tighter, angrier. Gabriel, I got copied on an internal memo today. Scooter's blaming the sprinkler head deficiencies on my crews. Says we installed wrong equipment, deviated from approved specs. The memo's already been distributed to the whole project team. That's garbage. The wrong heads came from his acceleration crew. Your guys weren't even on those floors. I know that. You know that. But the memo's already out there. One of my apprentices called me today, asking if he's going to get fired. Kid's 23 years old, got a baby on the way, and he's terrified he's going to lose his job over something he didn't even do. I'll document what actually happened, create a record that shows the real timeline. That's not enough. My aunt called me last night. She heard from someone at the union hall that Consolidated might get blacklisted from future hospital work in the metro area if this project goes sideways with our name attached to the problems. That's not just my job, Gabriel. That's every guy on my crew. That's their families. I sat with the phone pressed to my ear, feeling the weight of it. I can't fix this from inside, I told him. But I'm not going to let them pin it on you either. The following week, I started making phone calls, quietly, carefully, to people I'd worked with over the years who had moved on to other companies and other roles. One of those calls went to Sandra, who ran the commissioning division for an independent firm called Cornerstone Building Sciences. They specialized in owner's representative work, third-party commissioning oversight, and the kind of independent verification that building owners hired when they wanted someone whose paycheck didn't depend on the contractor's schedule performance. Sandra and I had worked together on a data center project in Aurora 5 years earlier. She knew my technical capabilities, understood my professional reputation, and recognized that the difficult aspects of my personality came packaged with a track record of projects that passed inspection. We met for lunch at a restaurant in Lodo, far enough from the Meridian job site that I wouldn't accidentally run into anyone from Ridgeline. She listened carefully while I explained the deteriorating situation. When I finished, she nodded slowly. We've actually been in preliminary discussions with the Meridian owner's insurance carrier about this project. Their risk management people are nervous. The hospital system is self-insured up to a significant threshold, which means they're personally exposed if something goes wrong. Their underwriters have been asking pointed questions about commissioning quality. We talked for another hour. By the end, I had a verbal commitment for a position as senior commissioning manager with Cornerstone, starting 6 weeks out to allow for proper transition. 15% salary increase, signing bonus that would cover transition costs, and explicit authority over my own testing protocols without interference from project executives who didn't understand what they were approving. I negotiated one additional term that mattered more to me than the money. No after-hours emergency calls for the first 90 days. I was done being the guy who got called at 2 in the morning to fix problems that other people had created through negligence. Done being the safety net. Done cleaning up disasters for people who'd never give me credit or protection in return. Sandra pushed back on that term initially. We sometimes need rapid response on critical projects. Then hire someone else for that first 90 days, I said. I've spent 25 years responding to emergencies that shouldn't have been emergencies. I need a clean break, she agreed. 3 days later, I had the written offer signed and locked in. The contract was solid. My attorney reviewed it. I had an exit strategy that didn't involve unemployment or desperation. The morning after I signed the Cornerstone offer, April 9th, Stan called me into his office. His assistant said immediately. Scooter was already seated when I arrived, along with Ridgeline's project attorney, a detail that told me everything about what was coming. Stan slid a multi-page document across his desk. We need you to sign the Life Safety System Readiness Certification Letter. The owner requires this documentation before we can apply for temporary certificate of occupancy. I read it carefully. A formal certification stating all life safety systems in the Meridian Medical Tower had been tested and commissioned per code and were ready for occupancy. My name typed on the signature line with space for my professional credentials. The fire pump acceptance test hasn't been witnessed by the AHJ, I said. Smoke control hasn't completed balancing procedures. Fire alarm verification is about 60% complete. The sprinkler system has documented deficiencies that haven't been corrected. Scooter jumped in. We can complete those items in parallel with the TCO review process. The systems are substantially ready for occupancy. Substantially ready isn't ready. I'm not signing a certification for systems that haven't been tested. Stan's voice hardened. This is fundamentally a business decision. Every day of delay past schedule costs significant liquidated damages, substantial money. Then find someone else to sign the letter. Because I won't. Stan leaned forward, trying to sound reasonable. Everyone signs these before the last punch list. It's standard practice. The completion happens in parallel. Then everyone's reckless. The attorney cleared his throat. For the record, Gabriel, you're declining to execute a document within the scope of your employment duties? I'm declining to commit fraud. Call it whatever you want. The silence stretched. Stan exchanged a look with the attorney. The fire marshal knows your name, Stan said finally. They know you've been commissioning lead for 18 months. If someone else signs, they'll ask questions. Good. They should ask questions, because this project isn't ready for occupancy. I stood up and pulled the envelope from my jacket, placed it on Stan's desk, directly on top of the unsigned certification. This is my resignation from Ridgeline Building Group, effective 2 weeks. I've accepted a position with another firm. I'll complete my documentation and transition files, but I won't sign letters certifying untested systems. Stan's face cycled through surprise, anger, then something like panic as he realized his backup plan had just walked out. My final 2 weeks at Ridgeline were an exercise in watching desperate people scramble for solutions to problems of their own creation. Stan brought in an outside consulting engineer from a firm I'd never heard of to review the life safety documentation and provide the certification the owner was demanding. The consultant spent 3 days on site, barely examined the actual installed systems, and signed the readiness letter with Scooter listed as the project commissioning coordinator who had overseen the testing program. I kept my head down during those weeks, finished my documentation, organized project files for transition, answered direct questions but didn't volunteer solutions to problems that weren't my responsibility anymore. I stopped working late to troubleshoot issues that should have been caught during proper commissioning. I stopped being the safety net. Pete called me midway through that first week. He was so mad. Scooter just CC'd the whole project team on an email, blaming my crews for the fire-stopping deficiencies too. Not just the sprinkler heads now. He's saying we installed wrong fire caulk, wrong intumescent materials, the whole thing. Did you install wrong materials? You know we didn't. We installed exactly what the submittals specified. Then the documentation will prove it. The documentation is being altered, Gabriel. One of my guys pulled up an inspection form he signed last month. His signature's still there, but the material spec references have been changed. Dates moved around. Someone went into the files and modified them. I felt cold settle in my chest. That's fraud. Yeah. And my family's been calling me nonstop. The union steward's already asking questions about whether guys should be cooperating with the investigation. Hold on to your original copies of everything. Don't sign anything new And don't talk to Ridgeline's lawyers without your own representation present. That's it? That's your advice? For now, that's all I can give you from inside. But this isn't over. Haley called me the night before my last day. Her voice was different than our previous conversations. Less angry, more scared. Dad, she said. There's rumors at the hospital that the opening might get pushed back significantly. Serious construction issue. What's really happening? There are systems that need substantially more testing before the building's safe for patients. The contractor's been under pressure, and shortcuts were taken that are going to have consequences. Shortcuts you tried to stop? Yeah. She was quiet. I could hear her working through the implications. I love you, I said. I wouldn't do anything that put you or your patients at risk, but I can't sign my name to documents that aren't true. I know, Dad. I know. About 3 weeks after my last day at Ridgeline, I was sitting in my truck outside a coffee shop, reviewing project files for my first cornerstone assignment, when my phone started blowing up. Pete first. His voice was tight, breathless, with chaos clearly audible in the background. Gabriel. The fire pump test. It's happening right now and it's going completely sideways. What do you mean sideways? The pump failed. Like, failed. Pressure came in way under threshold. Controllers throwing fault codes nobody can clear. The fire department rep is in there right now, and he is absolutely losing his mind. I could hear voices overlapping behind him. Someone shouting about documentation. A door slamming somewhere. The official AHJ witnessed acceptance test, the one that had been rescheduled twice while I was still there because the systems weren't ready, was finally happening, and it was falling apart in real time. My phone buzzed with a text from Hank Webb. Fire pump acceptance test failed. 14 psi under minimum threshold. Scooter showing the AHJ the readiness cert right now. This is about to get very ugly fast. I sat there in my truck watching the messages stack up. Another text from Hank. AHJ rep just stepped outside to make a phone call. Face like thunder. Calling his supervisor. Scooter followed him out trying to explain, but the guy won't even look at him. Then, 3 more fire department vehicles just pulled into the lot. Fire marshal's personal vehicle. This is now officially a situation. My phone rang again. Rudy Espinoza this time. His voice was shaking in a way I'd never heard from him in 15 years of working together. Gabriel, I'm standing in the pump room right now. They made me witness this test even though I told them directly, face to face, on the record, that the controller wasn't properly commissioned, that we hadn't completed the full startup sequence. They didn't care. They needed a witness signature, so they put me in the room. What happened during the test? The discharge pressure hit 111 pounds per square inch, 14 points under the 125 pounds per square inch threshold on the stamped hydraulic calculations for this project. The transfer switch threw 3 fault codes I've never seen before, codes that shouldn't even be possible if the controller was programmed correctly. The jockey pump kicked on and off 6 times in 2 minutes, which means there's a pressure leak somewhere in the system that nobody ever found. And when the fire department guy asked for the commissioning documentation showing the pump had already passed preliminary testing, Scooter handed him the letter, I said, already knowing. Yeah, the certification letter the consultant signed. The one claiming all life safety systems passed acceptance testing and are ready for occupancy. The AHJ rep read it, looked at the pump sitting there throwing alarms with pressure 14 points low, looked at Scooter standing there trying to explain, and his whole expression just changed. What did the AHJ rep say? He didn't say anything at first. That was the worst part. He just looked at the pump, looked at the pressure gauge reading 111 when it should have read 125 per the project calcs, looked at the certification letter in his hand. Then he looked at Scooter. Then what? He folded the letter very carefully and put it in his clipboard. Then he turned to Scooter and asked one question, real flat. Who wrote this? Scooter started stammering about the consulting engineer, about the process. The AHJ rep didn't wait for him to finish. He walked out of the pump room without saying another word, just turned and walked out like Scooter wasn't even there. I followed him to the lobby. He's on the phone with his supervisor right now. I can hear him through the door saying phrases like falsified documentation and potentially fraudulent certification, and we need to escalate this to the state fire marshal's office. Another text from Pete. They're shutting us down. All life safety work stopped immediately pending formal investigation. Scooter's trying to blame instrumentation error, but the fire marshal himself just arrived, and he's not buying any of it. I closed my eyes and leaned back in my seat. The test failure itself wasn't surprising. I'd known those systems weren't ready. What I hadn't fully anticipated was how fast everything would cascade once the AHJ saw that certification letter next to a pump throwing alarms. By 5 o'clock that evening, it was official. The AHJ failed the acceptance test, froze all further inspections and approvals, and put occupancy on hold pending investigation into the discrepancy between certified documentation and actual system performance. TCO application denied. The owner's insurance carrier dispatched their own independent engineering team to conduct a comprehensive assessment of every life safety system in the facility. The smoke control test happened the following week after the hold was partially lifted to allow diagnostic evaluation. The results were significantly worse than the fire pump failure. Stair pressurization systems are designed to maintain a minimum pressure differential of 0.05 inches of water column between the stairwell and the adjacent corridor, preventing smoke from entering the stairs during a fire event so occupants can evacuate safely. That's basic life safety code. 3 of the 4 stairwells in the Meridian Tower tested below 0.03 inches of water column, which is a failure. 2 of them actually showed negative pressure differentials during certain test conditions, meaning they would actively draw smoke into the stairwells rather than keeping it out. The systems designed to save lives during evacuation would instead create death traps. The fire marshal's comprehensive walk-down inspection found 17 fire-stopping penetrations through rated assemblies that didn't match the approved documentation and couldn't be verified as code compliant. Rated fire doors with incorrect hardware that wouldn't latch properly during a fire event. Missing duct smoke detectors and return air plenums serving patient care areas. Fire and smoke dampers that had been physically installed in the ductwork but never wired to the fire alarm system. Scooter tried to explain each deficiency as isolated. Subcontractor installation error. Documentation problem that could be resolved with additional paperwork. The fire marshal listened with the patient expression of someone who'd heard these excuses many times before. He took detailed notes on everything Scooter said. Then he asked to see the commissioning logs showing exactly who had verified each component and when. The logs showed Scooter's initials on verification steps that never actually happened. The consultant's certification based on a 3-day site visit that couldn't possibly have covered the scope described. The fire marshal didn't issue citations that day. He did something worse. He formally requested a joint meeting with the building owner, GC executive leadership, the project bonding company, and the owner's insurance carrier. I heard afterward that Stan tried to blame the failures on my departure, said I'd left critical work incomplete, suggested I might have deliberately sabotaged documentation on my way out. The fire marshal asked one straightforward question. Who signed the life safety readiness certification letter? The answer wasn't my name. The 6 weeks following the failed acceptance tests were absolute chaos at Ridgeline. The building owner froze all remaining contract payments pending resolution of the life safety deficiencies and a satisfactory explanation of how falsified certification documents had been submitted to regulatory authorities. The bonding company that had guaranteed the project opened a formal investigation into whether the work had been properly managed and whether their exposure was going to result in significant claims. The insurance carrier required independent third-party verification of all completed work before they would even consider reinstating coverage for the facility. Pete called me in the middle of that chaos, his voice exhausted in a way I'd never heard from him. They're blaming my crews for everything now, he said. Scooter submitted formal documentation to the bonding company investigator claiming we installed wrong materials, deviated from approved submittals, failed to follow specifications. He went back and altered inspection sign-off forms after the fact, changed dates, changed specification references, made it look like we deviated from approved materials when we installed exactly what the submittals told us to install. That's document fraud. That's criminal. I know it's fraud, but the company lawyers are involved now, and they're circling the wagons to protect leadership. My union steward's telling guys not to talk to anyone without legal representation present. My cousin won't even look at me on site anymore because his foreman told him to stay away from anyone connected to Consolidated until this shakes out. The fire marshal's investigation is going to subpoena the original documentation from the project servers. The bonding company's auditors are going to pull email records and submittal logs and change tracking data. If Scooter altered documents after they were originally created, the electronic timestamps and metadata will show exactly when those changes were made and by whose login credentials. And if the investigation doesn't dig deep enough to find that evidence, this much money is at stake, they'll dig. Bonding company has millions in exposure. Insurance carrier has even more. They'll hire forensic accountants and document examiners who do this professionally. If the fraud is there, they'll find it. Pete was silent for a long moment. Then, are you going to help us? Actively help us, I mean? I'm going to tell the complete truth when I'm asked, and I'm going to make sure I get asked. That's the help I can provide. Haley called 2 days later. The hospital had officially announced a minimum 3-month delay, possibility of more depending on remediation progress. Her position was being held, but the clawback was enforced. She owed $8,000 she'd already spent on apartment and living expenses, money she didn't have available to repay. Dad, I'm sorry. She'd been crying. I was so angry at you. I blamed you for creating problems, for being difficult, and you were right about everything. I didn't want to be right. I wanted the building safe and your job to start on time. Those should have been compatible. What happens now? The building gets fixed. Systems get properly tested by people who know what they're doing. It opens eventually, and it'll actually be safe. But it takes longer and costs more than if they'd done it right initially. Her voice hardened. The nurses are all talking. Someone falsified safety certifications. The hospital could have opened with systems that didn't work. People could have died. Patients who couldn't evacuate. Staff trying to help them. Me. My friends from nursing school. I know. Ridgeline's HR contacted me 3 times during this period. First to remind me of the standard confidentiality provisions in my original employment agreement and suggest any public statements could be considered violations subject to legal action. Second to offer a settlement package in exchange for a comprehensive release preventing cooperation with any investigation or legal proceeding. I declined. The third call came from their head of employee relations. Voice smooth and practiced. We'd hate for you to complicate things, Gabriel. For everyone's sake, then tell your people to stop forging. Long pause. The call ended. I saved that voicemail. My attorney said it might prove useful as evidence of attempted witness intimidation. Stan and Scooter turned on each other 5 weeks into the investigation. The bonding company's forensic auditors recovered email records showing Stan had directly instructed Scooter to expedite certification by whatever means necessary to meet timeline. Scooter had responded by documenting his concerns in an email he'd written but never sent, saving it in his drafts folder as insurance. But Ridgeline's exchange server retention policy meant even unsent drafts got backed up to the corporate archive, and the e-discovery process pulled it. When confronted with Scooter's unsent email, Stan claimed he never gave those instructions and Scooter had acted independently. When shown the discrepancy, Scooter claimed his father had pressured him into actions he knew were wrong. The bonding company's final report recommended immediate termination of both Stan and Scooter, referral of the consulting engineer to the state licensing board, and notification of relevant authorities regarding potential criminal charges. I started at Cornerstone Building Sciences on a Monday morning in late October, after the leaves had started changing color in the mountains west of Denver. My first 2 weeks were orientation, getting up to speed on their processes and systems, meeting the team. Then came my first major assignment. Cornerstone had been retained by the Meridian owner's insurance carrier for independent commissioning oversight of all remediation work on the life safety systems. My specific role, verify that every deficiency identified in the investigation was properly corrected, every system met code requirements, every document accurately reflected actual installed conditions. The same building where I'd been stripped of authority, pushed toward the exit, and set up to take the fall, was now a building where I held absolute veto power over the path to completion. Stan was terminated by Ridgeline's board of directors 3 weeks before I started the oversight engagement. The official explanation cited project management deficiencies, resulting in significant financial exposure and reputational damage to the company. The unofficial explanation was that the bonding company had made his removal a non-negotiable condition of continuing their guarantee on the project. Scooter resigned 2 days after his father's termination. His LinkedIn profile now says independent construction management consultant, but word travels fast in the Denver construction community. As far as I've been able to determine, he hasn't secured any consulting clients. The consulting engineer who signed the fraudulent certification had his professional license suspended by the state board pending formal hearing. Criminal referral was under consideration by the district attorney's office. Pete's crews were formally cleared of any wrongdoing in the final investigation report. The forensic document analysis proved exactly what he'd told me. They installed exactly what was specified, and problems originated from management decisions and documentation fraud at levels far above the field. His company received a substantial change order for corrections that weren't their fault, and their reputation in the local market improved once the truth came out. But it wasn't free. Pete told me later his guys lost close to 400 hours of work during the stop work period. Consolidated ate about $12,000 in legal fees fighting the false accusation. A few of his younger guys quit during the uncertainty, spooked by the rumors. The vindication was real, but so was the damage. The remediation took 4 months of intensive work. I witnessed every acceptance test personally, reviewed every piece of documentation for accuracy and completeness, walked every floor with the fire marshal, and answered every technical question he had about the systems and their verification procedures. The fire pump passed on the first attempt after the motor was replaced and controller properly programmed by someone who actually understood the system. Smoke control achieved full compliance after significant rebalancing. All fire stopping was removed and reinstalled with proper documentation. Fire alarm verified device by device, circuit by circuit. The tower received its certificate of occupancy in February, 7 months behind Stan's promised schedule. Haley started her surgical ICU position the following week. The hospital worked out a payment plan for her clawback. Cornerstone paid me a project completion bonus that I quietly used to pay off her remaining balance. She called me the night before her first shift. Dad, I walked through the building during orientation. Everything's where it should be. That's how it's supposed to work. I just wanted to thank you for walking away instead of going along. The next morning, I drove to the Meridian Tower for a final walkthrough with the fire marshal. We took the stairs together, all 14 floors, checking every landing, every pressurization sensor, every door closer. At the top, he signed the final approval, handed me the official copy. Clean job, Nolan! Should have been you from day one. I walked back down alone. In the lobby, I passed a group of nurses in scrubs heading toward the elevators. One of them was Haley. She didn't see me, but I saw her, laughing with her colleagues, starting her first real day. I walked out to my truck and pulled out my phone. Texted Pete, "You're cleared. Final report confirmed. Your guys are good." His reply came 30 seconds later. "About damn time. Stakes on me." I started the engine and pulled out of the lot. The Meridian Medical Tower filled my rearview mirror, 14 stories of glass and steel, ready to receive its first patients. I never looked back. Guys, we are so close to hit 100,000 subscribers on this channel. If you are not subscribed to the channel, please consider subscribing. It really helps hit that 100,000 mark. Thanks for making this dream come true.